Yeah, I found this crazy article, by the way. Insane. There's so much misinformation, I'm not gonna lie. And I wanted to discuss this article. So like the live, share the live, everybody. Hi, everybody. Apparently, within Eritrea, according to an Israeli newspaper, indigenous Christian populations are being oppressed by a jihadi government, y'all. I was looking through this article and I thought to myself, let me read this article, okay? And I was like, what the fuck? I need to address this on live. I need to address this on live because this is actually batshit crazy, y'all. This is batshit crazy, bro. Yes, they're basically claiming that, this is an Israeli article, okay, by the way, but they're basically trying to claim that, Muslim extremist movements are oppressing Black, African, indigenous people in Eritrea. Of course, they don't know anything about Eritrea, right? So, I'm trying to address this. So it says here, with the media focused on Gaza, hi Shabia, hi. With the media focused on Gaza, Christians across Africa fall to a globalizing jihad. The case of Eritrea is particularly instructive as it demonstrates what can happen to the freedom of religion, conscience, and expression when the far left comes to power enabled by an Islamic majority. Bro, do you guys know how insane this conversation is? Because on the one side, you got some extremists claiming, Sheikh Isa Safork, literally, on the one side, you have some extremists claiming that Eritrea is this Tigrinya Christian supremacist country. And then on the other side, you have people claiming that Eritrea somehow is a far left Islamic jihadist country. Who wrote this? So this was written by a woman called Uze Bulut, who is a Turkish journalist, and Charles Jacobs, who is the president of the Jewish Leadership Project, right? So this is literally what they're saying, right? And then after that, I do want to delve into the situation of Eritrea as a whole, what actually is happening in Eritrea, because a lot of people just don't understand what's happening there. And a lot of people just are making misinformation about what is happening to the country, right? So that's what I also want to delve into, right? But yeah, I'm gonna kind of dissect this article. Kavi, there are two extreme tendencies in some areas. Oh yeah, I agree, 100%. 100% I agree. I agree, Beradan. By the way, Beradan, are you the person who was a Tagadalai? Because if that's the truth, then thank you for your service for our country, it's an honor to have a person who was a Tagadalai in my life. So I just wanted to say that, by the way. But yeah, no, 100%, right? Sinite hafte ma'are. Look at this. Isn't this crazy? So, agalgulot. Okay. Agalgulot naverka. Okay. Well, thank you still, 100%. Agalgulot natka. Thank you. We respect your service. We respect anybody who sacrificed anything for our country. So, Yeah, no, I was gonna say, so a lot of people are just confused about what Eritrea is, okay? City, this is an article that I found on an Israeli newspaper, and I was reading it, and to me it was really crazy. And so that is what I'm addressing, and then after that I will be addressing what is actually happening in Eritrea, okay? Because I think it's an important conversation that we need to have. With regards to, yes, it's called the JNS. You see it here? The JNS is an Israeli, I think it's like Jerusalem Post or something like that. So at first I'm going to dissect this, and then I'll dissect the misconception about what's happening in Eritrea, and then I'll tell you what actually is happening in Eritrea, because Eritrean people are suffering, okay? Like Eritrean people are actually suffering on the ground. There is actually oppression, but the problem is it's not what the way that people are depicting it to be, okay? So I don't know why this Turkish woman, Ozey Bulut, and this random white dude is writing about Eritrea. So it says here, while the world's eyes are on Gaza, people who would otherwise care have been made blind to the plight of black Christians persecuted across Africa. There are approximately 15 countries where jihadists, ideological cousins of Hamas, oppress indigenous Christian populations. This word indigenous is like... In countries like Nigeria, jihadist assaults by Boko Haram and Fulani are almost exact analogous to the Hamas pogrom in Israel on October the 7th, 2023. Armed groups stormed African villages there, slaughter, torture, and burn innocent villagers, and rape and kidnap women and girls as sex slaves. Americans know a bit of this because Michelle Obama, an instinctive reaction to a mass kidnapping of Nigerian schoolgirls by Boko Haram jihadists in April 2014, created a campaign called Bring Back Our Girls. Sadly, she suddenly abandoned the effort soon after she launched. By the way, I'm not laughing at like the girls getting kidnapped. I was laughing at Sanit's comment, right? And then they say here, the case of Eritrea is particularly instructive as it demonstrates what can happen to the freedom of religion, conscience, and expression when the far left comes to power, enabled by an Islamic majority. In Eritrea, an Islamist alliance with communists may mirror what many fear may come to pass in Europe as a red-green alliance menacingly grows. What? The area of what is today Eritrea has a long history of Christianity, which remained the dominant religion in the country despite the arrival of Islam in the 7th century. Islamic invasions in the 16th century conducted by Ahmed Gureng, or Gure, the Muslim leader of the Sultanate of Adal, which is modern-day Somalia, resulted in the death of thousands, including many Christian leaders. The International Christian Concern reports that following these attacks, Islam grew significantly in the region, leaving the population the following years split nearly half Christian and half Muslim. Eritrea has been a federal component of Ethiopia, a majority Christian country, when the Eritrean Liberation Front, a Muslim-led guerrilla force, launched a holy war that lasted 30 years. What? That's I'm so sorry. Isn't this crazy? What the hell? You know, they're calling the liberation movement a holy war. Hello, Salam Yasin. This is crazy. The ELF then combined with Marxists and formed the Marxist-Leninist Eritrean People's Liberation Front. In 1993, Eritrea voted for independence in a referendum and has been run by the People's Front for Democracy and Justice, PFDJ, which replaced the EPLF. Since its independence from Ethiopia in 1993, the dictatorial regime of Eritrea has been an absolute authoritarianism that is doing everything possible to maintain its power. It has arrested, harassed, and murdered Christians who are considered to be agents of the West and a threat to the government. Regime authorities regularly conduct house raids. Hundreds of Eritreans are detained without charge or trial in detention sites across the country, often in horrific conditions. Many are held on account of their political views or religious beliefs. Some die in prison because of torture and denial of medical care. Pastor Gurmai Araya, one of the founding fathers of the Full Gospel Church in Eritrea, died in prison in May 2024. He was arrested in 2021, though never charged with a crime. Okay, so this is the issue that I have, right? They're mixing some truths with like misinformation. Exactly. They're missing like they're mixing some truths, right? So the truth here is yes, the regime is authoritarian. Another truth is yes, people are arbitrarily detained. Another truth is yes, countless people have died within like arbitrary detention. But the issue here is they're trying to say that it is an Islamist group that is doing this, or like an Islamist leaning group, right? So it's exactly, and the fact that Muslims are also literally being detained, right? Within Eritrea, literally, the current government in Eritrea literally does not care if you're a Muslim or a Christian. Okay? The moment you are anti-it, you are gone. That's the issue. Exactly. The moment you are anti-it, you are gone. And I think a lot of people don't understand how bad the situation is in Eritrea. Like in Eritrea, the situation is incredibly, incredibly bad. Like it's actually horrific. Okay? So, but like, they're not addressing the issues. Instead, they're trying to spread propaganda by spreading misinformation. Okay? The government is not a Christian government. It is not a Muslim government. It is literally a secular government. I think that's the issue that a lot of people are not addressing. Okay? And I've noticed that there have been a lot of people who are on social media or who are just trying to control this narrative to make it seem as if the government is somehow like a religious entity, when that's not the case. Literally, it's not a religious entity. It is not specifically like persecuting like only Muslims or persecuting only Christians. And so the question is, why are people spreading this propaganda about Eritrea? Right? Why are people spreading this propaganda about Eritrea and about Eritreans? So let's continue though. On August, by the way, I'm reading an Israeli newspaper. That's what I'm reading, right? I'm reading an Israeli newspaper. The ELF was not established by the Muslim Brotherhood. The ELF was literally established by Eritreans in Egypt. Anyways, again, there's also this misconception that the ELF or the EPLF were somehow Western actors or Arab actors. That's not true. Okay? Our rebel fighters literally were seeing how we were occupied in our own country, and they decided to pick up arms and fight against Ethiopia. Okay? So I think this is very important to understand. They didn't have an alternative agenda. There's like this misinformation saying, they were controlled by the Arabs, they were controlled by the West, no, they were not. These were Eritrean people who saw our community literally being occupied, who saw our community literally like being erased, and then they decided to create a liberation movement and fight against this occupation and colonization. That's what the Ethiopian government did to us. The Ethiopian government, after it annexed us, it banned our languages, it banned our flag, it actively like occupied every aspect of Eritrean life. It put checkpoints within our community. And then it targeted a lot of communities around Eritrea, and especially the Muslim communities as well. And so actively people, literally all Eritreans, decided to create a liberation movement to fight against this occupation, and the Ethiopian government genocided us, literally for 30 years. So I need people to stop demonizing our rebel fighters and spreading their propaganda about our rebel fighters. Salam, I heard Hafte. They need to stop spreading propaganda about our rebel fighters as well. This is also something that I want to address, that a lot of people have been spreading propaganda. I've heard people saying that the ELF were just doing it for the Arabs, that they were Muslim Brotherhood, that they were they wanted to implement Sharia or whatever it is, right? And on the other side, I've heard people talk about the EPLF and how they had weapons from America. None of this is nonsense. Eritrean people wanted to be free in their own country. That is a fact. They were not doing it for anybody else. They were not doing it for the Arabs. They were not doing it for the West. They were doing it for Eritrean people. Okay? And when you live within a country where you're actively only a guerrilla group, you don't have support from a majority of the world, and you're actively being genocided by a whole country, that's a level of desperation that leads to people joining a liberation movement. So, respectfully, before you spread misinformation about our liberation movement, I'm gonna need you guys to speak to like an actual Eritrean person to understand why Eritreans decided to join liberation movements. Also, before people decide to spread misinformation about our community and what's happening, right, with regards to Eritrean people and what we are going through as a people, you need to talk to an Eritrean person as well. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are spreading a lot of misinformation about Eritreans, and at the end of the day, what that is doing is it's manufacturing consent to basically delegitimize our country, right? So on August 22nd, several Christian, by the way, if anybody has any questions, I'm open to answer your questions, right? Let this be Ask an Eritrean Day. I'm open to answer any questions you have with regards to our country, with regards to our struggles. Why you do this to yourself? You're an intelligent, beautiful girl hiding on the past, protecting now. I'm not protecting now. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I would never deny the fact that my people are suffering, right? But me acknowledging my people are suffering does not mean that I am going to support Ethiopia invading us. I don't want Ethiopia to invade us. I don't want any outside country to invade us. I want reform to be implemented. I want reform to be implemented by Eritrean people. I don't want the help of Ethiopia. I don't want the help of the West. I don't want the help of fucking Israel. I don't want the help of any other country. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people online who are like radicalized people who are actively taking the trauma of our communities, because there's very real trauma. Eritrean people are dying, okay, in mass. And there are people who are taking this trauma and they're deciding to weaponize it. They're deciding to actively weaponize it against our communities, to cause division within our communities, and to also actively harm Eritrean people. And that is what I'm trying to prevent. Okay? Like this, for example. This one is just lying flat out, trying to demonize Eritrean Muslims. This article. On August the 22nd, several Christian rights groups in various countries proclaimed the International Day of commemorating victims of acts of violence based on religion or belief, and called on the international community to take action by means of demonstrations, processions, and prayer meetings on behalf of 7 Eritrean Christians, including Orthodox priests who have been imprisoned for more than 20 years without charges. Advocates gathered outside of the Eritrean embassy in Washington, D.C. to protest their detention in the majority Muslim nation. What? This is the issue that I have. What? This is crazy. I listen, as an Eritrean person, I don't know when it became a majority Muslim nation. But anyways, the embassy of the state of Eritrea in Washington, D.C. refused to accept a letter advocating for their release. Pastors and priests are typically the main target for persecution and arrest in the country. Eritrean church leaders, the Reverend Haile Neziga, Dr. Koflu Gabra Maskal, and Reverend Million Gabra Selassie, Futsum Gabra Nagus, Dr. Takhlaab Mengistaab, and Gabra Mithin Gabra Georgios, Pastor Kidana Waldo, and have been detained arbitrarily for at least 20 years, says Tiffany Behrens, Open Doors International Global Advocacy Director. Not one has been charged or brought before a court, she continues. They have had no legal representation, and their families have not been permitted to visit them. We're calling for their immediate release. To oppose the regime is to risk arrest, torture, and the denial of legal protection. Today, more than half of the Eritrean population is Muslim. Where did they get this number from? I'm so sorry. Where did they get this number from? And this is what I mean is the issue, right? They're taking very real issues within our country, which is arbitrary detention. Arbitrary detention is a very real issue that is happening within our country. People are being arbitrarily detained. But then they're adding misinformation. Like, where are they getting these numbers from? I'm confused. Where did they get that 53% of the population is Muslim and Christians constitute 44% of the population? Eritrea ranks number 6 in the World Watch List of Open Doors, which monitors Christian persecution, dictatorial paranoia, plus Islamic oppression makes for Christian persecution. Basma'am. According to the Freedom House, Eritrea is a militarized authoritarian state that has not held a national election since independence from Ethiopia in 1993. Arbitrary detention is commonplace and citizens are required to perform national service, often for their entire working lives. The government shut down all independent media in 2001. Eritrea is often called the North Korea of Africa, which, by the way, this is dehumanizing, by the way. Calling it the North Korea of Africa is also dehumanizing, because it makes it seem as if we are incapable of running our country, and it doesn't take into account all the external and internal factors that are causing the issue that is happening today in Eritrea. And so people, usually, this is also, by the way, a rhetoric that is weaponized by Ethiopianists. So basically, Ethiopian people who are pro the government, okay, and Ethiopian people who are pro, especially Abiy Ahmed, they tend to weaponize this terminology to dehumanize Eritrea and then justify invading the country. Due to extreme censorship, phone calls are monitored, bandwidth is kept slow, and a network of citizens is tasked with spying on neighbors. Eritrea tops the list of the most censored countries by the Committee Project journalist CPI, which is true. That part is true. Tokyo, I don't disagree with that, Tokyo. I don't disagree with that. I'm not sitting here saying that Eritrean people are not actively suffering today. Don't mistake that. But whatever is written in this article, they're adding a lot of misinformation. They're adding a lot of misinformation. The arbitrary detention is true. But who is doing the arbitrary detention and why is it being done? The government is not a far left government which has Islamist leanings. That's just fake, that's just misinformation, right? And this harms Eritrean people. If you actually care about Eritrean people and Eritrean civilians within the country and outside the country, you would not be spreading this narrative, which is a narrative that is used to justify our invasion and to manufacture consent. Because this is what they're doing, by the way. This is what they're doing, by the way. They're actively trying to manufacture consent to invade us. right? So the country is also targeted by Islamist groups such as the Eritrean Islamic Jihad movement. Oh my God. EIJM's goals include jihad against the Eritrean government and to create an Islamic Eritrean state. Meanwhile, the Eritrean regime stands accused by many reports issued by the United Nations, as well as by neighboring countries, of supporting and sponsoring Islamic insurgents in the Horn of Africa, such as Al-Shabaab. Do you guys know who came up with this misinformation that we're funding Al-Shabaab, by the way? Can somebody guess? Which, by the way, this misinformation destroyed our economy. Like, this misinformation actively destroyed our economy, by the way. Do you know who pushed this misinformation? Yeah. Yeah, not only the Obama administration, but it was like Ethiopia and the Kenyan government. Right? The Ethiopian government and the Kenyan government, backed by the American government, pushed this misinformation that we were funding Al-Shabaab. And where did they get this information from? They didn't. It was like speculation. The United Nations had no evidence at all that we were funding Al-Shabaab. They had no proof. But you know what they did? They still implemented sanctions on our country in 2009. And those sanctions effectively destroyed our economy. They destroyed our economy so much so that it increased the amount of people who were fleeing. Right? And you know when they lifted these sanctions, by the way? In like 2017, 2018. They just lifted these sanctions. They released a report every year, an annual report every year from 2009 up until like 2018 to check if there was any proof that we funded Al-Shabaab, and they found no evidence. Literally, if you read every single annual report from the United Nations, they literally say that there is no evidence. Destroyed our economy. And then in like 2017 or 2018, they were like, oh, you know, actually, we didn't find any proof that they were funding Al-Shabaab, therefore we're going to remove the sanctions. But at that point, our economy had already gotten fucking destroyed. Our economy had actively been destroyed. And this is why I don't even trust the United Nations. I don't trust international law. I don't trust the global community. And this is one of the reasons as to why that Eritrea has been actively isolationist, by the way, because ultimately it actively gets punished. The punishment is that we live next to a genocidal state. And at the same time, these external factors are not being taken into account when internally we also are oppressed. That's the crazy thing. Literally, like Eritrean people inside the country are suffering, okay? They're suffering. So basically, as an Eritrean person, you don't fucking find peace inside the country and you don't find peace outside the country. You're just screwed wherever you go. You're just screwed wherever you go. Westerners should take note. See, the targeted audience of this article is Westerners. Why Westerners? Where were the Westerners when Eritrea was being genocided for 30 years? Where were the Westerners when we experienced famine? Where were the Westerners when we got invaded again in 98? Where were the Westerners when our land was occupied up until 2020? Where were the Westerners when international sanctions were being applied? Where were the Westerners when Eritrea has been historically choked out by the Western community and by the international community? Where are they? But now all of a sudden they're trying to target a Western audience so that the West can justify invading Eritrea, right? It's all to just manufacture consent. Acting now on behalf of African victims is not simply just and moral, it may also prepare them to take the measures they need that can guard their democracies against a similarly destructive fate. Now, why the hell is Uzay Bulut, who is a Turkish journalist, and Charles Jacobs, who is the president of the Jewish Leadership Project, writing this? Like, what's the purpose? What's their agenda for them to even write this? Right? So what are the facts of the matter? Number one fact, arbitrary detention is real within Eritrea. Okay? People literally get arbitrarily detained for anything. Sometimes you're not even told why you're getting arbitrarily detained. Your parents are not notified why they're arbitrarily detained. Or why you are being arbitrarily detained, right? And people, sometimes, if they get arbitrarily detained and disappeared, some people have gotten disappeared since like the 1990s, okay? They've never been seen ever since then. There are some people who have been detained for decades. So arbitrary detention is real. Does a person get due process? No, they don't get due process. Like, when you get arbitrarily detained, you're not getting detained because you're being charged with a crime, or you don't get a free trial. You just get arbitrarily detained. Is there quote-unquote freedom of speech? No, you can't. You can't express your active opinion on anything. You can't. If you express your opinion or your dissent, nothing. You can get arbitrarily detained. You get disappeared. Okay? So that is a fact. Is the government doing this because they are Lainey said, so once you're detained, you have zero rights. No, you have zero rights before you're detained. You have zero rights before you're even detained, okay? So, yeah. So is the government somehow like a Tigrinya supremacist government? No, it's not. Okay? It's not an ethnic-based government. It's not a religious-based government. It's a secular government. That's one misinformation that I've noticed that is being spread. There's an attempt to demonize certain ethnicities. There's an attempt to demonize certain religions within Eritrea by holding them accountable for the actions of the government, by claiming that the government is acting on ethnic or religious basis. No, that's not what's happening. The government doesn't do this on ethnic or religious basis. The government does this literally because it puts preserving the territorial integrity first and foremost. That's what's happening, right? The territorial integrity is first and foremost. So the government is doing this because it's going to do every single thing and gonna sacrifice every single thing for territorial integrity. And you have to imagine Eritrea, which is a country of like 3.5 to 6 million people, maximum 10 million people, has kept the Ethiopian government, which is a country of over 190 million people, at bay for all these years. That is the strategic importance of the territorial integrity. If people disagree with me, by the way, you can definitely request. You can definitely come up. I'm very open to having this discussion. But, yeah, I'm definitely open to have this discussion, by the way. But that's the whole point, right? So when you look at Eritrea on the map, okay? So this is Eritrea, right? So let's look at Eritrea on the map. Okay? Look at this right here. See this? This is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Okay? The Bab el-Mandeb Strait literally is one of the top 10, if not top 5 economic hubs in the world. This whole region. There are only 3 countries that control the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The only 3 countries that control the Bab el-Mandeb Strait are literally Yemen, Djibouti, and Eritrea. So the only 3 countries. And now you begin to understand why there's a lot of destabilization around this area. What's happening in Yemen is not a coincidence. Djibouti literally has army bases of the whole world, literally, including the Chinese and the Japanese, okay? And Eritrea is basically the last country that has not been entered for that particular reason. So basically you have the Bab el-Mandeb Strait right here. You have the Gulf of Aden right here. Okay? And then, you have the Red Sea, and then you have the Suez Canal right here. So basically, the geographic location is the curse. What is ultimately the curse of this whole region is a geographic location. Hi, Afratko. Right? The geographic location is leading to a lot of people basically fighting, and when I say a lot of people, I mean a lot of countries, fighting for control over this whole area. You don't believe me? Fine. Let's listen to what Dan Diker says, okay? So Dan Diker, hold on. Hold on. Where the hell is this? Give me a second. Wait, give me a second, hold on. Hold on. Wait, give me a second. I had it here. Let me show you what Dan Diker says, right? Dan Diker, by the way, is the founder of the Jerusalem Institute of Peace and Affairs or some shit like that, okay? This guy is an incredibly important person. Found it, okay. Let's see what he says. Hold on. Here. Oh, surprise, surprise. Who posted it? The JNS. Isn't that crazy? The same JNS that was actively right now spreading propaganda about Eritrea. That's the country that that's that same outlet that is posting this, by the way. Pay attention to that. Hold on. Okay. Here, what does he say?
Maritime terror across the Red Sea by the Iranian regime. It could be that Eritrea is a key to stability and security, working together with Israel as an anchor of security for the whole Red Sea, and specifically the Bab el-Mandeb Pass, which is that choke point that the entire region, and in fact the world, is competing for.
Did you hear that? The Bab el-Mandeb Pass, the entire region and the world is competing for.
Security for the whole Red Sea, and specifically the Bab el-Mandeb Pass, which is that choke point that the entire region, and in fact the world, is competing for, and quite concerned about the Iranian regime's intensifying control and terror across the Red Sea.
Literally. This is precisely why article after article, look at this, article after article, this is the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Article after article, they mention the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, okay? So much so they did try to erase the history. What does it say here? Since that time, Iran has been seeking alternatives to its Sudanese supply line, and one of the countries the Iranians have been active in is in Eritrea. But in Eritrea as well, the Saudis have been seeking to limit the Iranian presence in the critical Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the naval choke point at the bottom of the Red Sea. Right? Every article, they always mention this, okay? It's very interesting. Even here, look at this. This is, by the way, the Jerusalem Center for Affairs. They're erasing the identity of Eritreans, okay? They literally call us Tigrayan. Tigrayans are Ethiopian. So they say here, towards the end of the 19th century, the Italians created the artificial state of Eritrea, dividing the Tigrayans into Eritreans and Ethiopians. What is this? So they're actively taking a very real issue, okay, which is happening to Eritrean people, and then they're adding their own spin and narrative to it to spread propaganda. And then on top of that, they are adding their own narrative to, number one, erase the identity of Eritreans, to make it seem as if the country of Eritrea is illegitimate, to make it seem as if the identity of Eritrean is illegitimate, it doesn't exist. And ultimately, what all of this is doing is it then justifies the invasion of Eritrea, not helping Eritrean people. That's the thing that's so irritating, that nobody is thinking actually of helping Eritrean people. Nobody is thinking of legitimately looking into the needs and the wants of Eritrean people, how to reform the system, how to help Eritrea. No. That's not what's happening. What's happening is they're actively erasing the identity, erasing the indigeneity, erasing the legitimacy, erasing the suffering of some groups of people, and then using that to invade. All right? So it says here, Eritrean geography near, what does it say here, okay? It says here, toward the end of the 19th century, the Italians created the artificial state of Eritrea, dividing the Tigrayans into Eritreans and Ethiopians. In 1941, the British replaced the Italians. In 1952, Eritrea federated with Ethiopia. And in 1962, King Haile Selassie dissolved the federation, unifying Ethiopia. What does this sentence do? This sentence is basically claiming that we're just long lost Ethiopians. That's what this sentence is doing. The sentence is just literally saying we are long lost Ethiopians. And what are a people without their identity? Right? What are a people without their identity? Exactly. A people without their identity are nothing. They're basically saying that we're nothing. That's what they're saying. They're saying that we're nothing. We don't exist. And if we don't exist, why do we deserve a country? And if we don't exist, why do we deserve a country, right? Eritrean geography near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait made Ethiopia an important regional and global player. It became part of Israel's Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion's alliance of the periphery with Iran and Turkey to contain pan-Arab nationalism. In recent years, the Horn of Africa has become one of the areas of competition between China and America due to the Belt and Road Project, which is about creating a new Chinese-controlled economic and political order to replace the American order. This is ultimately what is happening. There we go. This is the crux of this issue. I'm reading from the Jerusalem Center for Freedom and Jerusalem Center for what's called an Affairs. Hold on. Where is it? Why is it not working? Sorry, y'all. Give me a second. This one. The Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. That's what I'm reading from. This is a think tank that was created by this guy. This is the president of that think tank. You see right here?
Maritime terror.
There we go. Right there. He says he's the president of the Jerusalem Center for Peace and Affairs. Peace or something, what's it called? For Security and Foreign Affairs. This is the president of that think tank. This president, the same guy who was sitting here saying this.
Maritime terror across the Red Sea by the Iranian regime. It could be that Eritrea is a key to stability and security, working together with Israel as an anchor of security for the whole Red Sea, and specifically the Bab el-Mandeb Pass, which is that choke point that the entire region, and in fact the world, is competing for and quite concerned about the Iranian regime's intensifying control and terror across the Red Sea.
And I feel like what's really sad to me is a lot of people are not paying attention, by the way, to this. A lot of people in the diaspora are literally not paying attention to any of this, right? Look at this. Eritrea is uniquely situated to help Israel in Africa and beyond. What? Huh? These people are literally actively writing all of this shit. Like, people are not even asking themselves, why is there ethnic and religious divide being orchestrated within our communities? Because it is orchestrated. This religious and ethnic divide does not exist in Eritrea on the ground. On the ground in Eritrea, ethnic and religious issues don't exist. The issues that exist are political. The issues that exist on the ground are political, okay? But you're saying, so what? No, you have to pay attention. You can't say, so what? You can't say, so what, when they're actively attempting to invade, bro. Are you listening to the speeches of Abiy Ahmed? This guy is actively, literally saying the most genocidal stuff on a regular basis. This guy literally had a speech where he said, what did he say? He said, nobody cared about Palestine and Ukraine. Who's gonna care about Eritrea? What? This guy on national TV said, nobody cares about Palestine and Ukraine. Who's gonna care and die for you? How is it not a genocidal statement? And how was he not condemned? The African Union has been silent on this. IGAD was silent on this. Literally, nobody condemned this guy for making these genocidal statements on a regular basis towards all these people, while the international community is manufacturing consent by erasing our identity and erasing our very existence. This is the crazy thing. Erasing our existence, keep the diaspora busy with ethnic and religious divisive rhetoric, depopulate the country, because the country is being depopulated. It is like the number one, I think, or one of the top 5 crumbling and emptying countries, while at the same time manufacturing consent to then justify an invasion. Let's see what Abiy Ahmed said, okay? He also said Ethiopia's 130 million people are unjustly... No, it's not unjustly landlocked. You have access. You have commercial access. You rejected it. That's the thing that's so crazy to me. They have commercial access. They rejected it. They have commercial access. They just rejected it. They don't want... Like, the Ethiopian government does not want access. It wants ownership. It wants ownership of the land. It does not want access because it rejected it. Hold on. I'll show it to you, right? So, look at this. This is a lie, by the way, that they're also trying to manufacture. It says here, Ethiopia has rejected an offer from its former foe, Eritrea, to use its Red Sea ports to transfer food aid. Some 14 million Ethiopians are estimated to be at risk from famine next year because of their failure, the failure of crucial rains. Ethiopia's Minister of State for Information, Netzanet Asafau, told Reuters news agency that they did not need to use their neighbors' ports, Asab and Massawa. We have no problem with ports. Our problem at the moment is that there is not enough food to be transported into the country, she said, by telephone from the capital, Addis Ababa. Landlocked Ethiopia currently relies on ports in Djibouti and Somaliland. Aid agents, and then it says here, Eritrea made the offer despite hostile relations between the two countries' governments, the legacy of a bloody 2-year border war which began in 1998. When was this? What does it say here? 2002. Now, why is this crucial? 2002 is just 2 years after the Bademe border war ended. So basically, to kind of give you to give you a background, Eritrea was occupied and colonized, and then after the Italians left and were kicked out in 1941, the British come in. The Eritreans want their freedom. The British say no. They pass it on to the European, the United Nations. Okay, and then after they pass on to the United Nations, the United Nations says, okay, well, because America comes in there and tells them, hey, you need to be united, and they kind of force Eritrea to be colonized, right, or occupied by Ethiopia, and then that triggers a 30-year independence struggle and genocide that ends in 1998. Right after 1998, Eritrea offers port access. Okay, Ethiopia is using that port access for 7 years, and then 98, it invades again. And that lasts 2 years, hundreds of thousands. By the way, during the 30-year genocide, 20% of our population were killed. So this was a destructive genocide. 20% of our population were killed. Okay? And then 98, they invade again. Lasts until 2000. And then starting 2000, they occupy Eritrean lands. They kick out Eritrean people. They kicked out, also ethnically cleansed about 100,000 Eritrean people who were in Ethiopia, by the way. They were ethnically cleansed. But then they also further ethnically cleansed more Eritrean people. More Eritrean people from Bademe. See, brilliant, Kavi, your looks are that of a typical Jewish girl. Are you from? Yes, I'm from Israel. Okay. Do you love Israel? Do you love Israel? Yes, I'm from Israel. Clearly, you know, you can hear it in my accent. I'm from Israel, you know. I'm from Tel Aviv. Yes. Do you love Israel? But anyways, as I was saying, Hamas, exactly. You know, I woke up today and I'm a vegan, you know. I go to the refrigerator and I see that I don't have any cashew milk anymore. And I thought, damn, Hamas came into my refrigerator and stole my vegan milk, you know. Do you condemn Hamas? Why are you speaking about the Horn? Because I am from the Horn. What are you talking about? No, of course I'm from Israel. Do you love Israel? Anyways, right? So there is this attempt to say that it's a port access, but that's not true. Okay? It's not about a port access. Do you love Israel? Exactly. It's not about a port access. They want ownership. Do you guys? Who wants to read the statement from Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister? Who wants to read the statement? Should I read it for you guys? The statement that he released on Orthodox Christmas, by the way. Orthodox Christmas was like on the 7th or the 8th, right? This guy released a genocidal statement. This is the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, by the way. You ought to check your DNA. Yes, I am 100% Jewish. Actually, no, I'm not 100% Jewish. I'm 100% Israeli. I did my DNA test already, Mr. Z Brilliant. I'm 100% Israeli, okay? But yeah, no, hold on. Let me read, okay? Hold on. So I sent a okay? Now I sound French. I'm sorry, doesn't the Israeli accent low-key sound French? There's this statement, and then there was this statement. So this is by Prosperity Party. This statement was by Prosperity Party. I'll read it out to you. But first, let me read this statement that was released by Abiy Ahmed for Orthodox Christmas, okay? So, by the way, this guy is living in a crumbling country. Ethiopia is literally crumbling from the inside, okay? There are multiple civil wars happening currently in Ethiopia. This guy, Abiy Ahmed, literally is airstriking his own people. It's airstriking, drone striking, sorry, his own people. He's starving his own people by blocking aid, okay? And this guy, while Ethiopia is crumbling from the inside due to the multiple civil wars, this guy still has the time to release like a fucking genocidal statement. So this is what he says, okay? So I translated it, right? Message for the feast of the Nativity of Jesus Christ. Merry Christmas to you all. This year we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ with the faith that the promised word has arrived, the light of change has begun to shine, and the era of transition is drawing near. Our journey has been full of ups and downs. We have hosted discouraging hardships. While we do not say that trials will never visit us again, we have reached the eve where our hope is born. We can say with confidence that this era of misery has been sent away, never to return. And the era of recovery has arrived. Imagine using Jesus Christ's story to be like expansionist. Crazy. The birth of Jesus Christ redeemed yesterday and saved tomorrow. Everything that took place from Adam until the birth of Christ found value because of Christ's birth. Human life after the birth of Christ became upright because of Christ. Christ became the today between yesterday and tomorrow, reconciling the two. This is why we celebrate the birth of Christ with great honor. Had Christ not been born, the work of the prophets who prophesied, the priests who offered sacrifices, the fathers who received the covenant, and all of humanity who hoped would have remained merely history. It was Christ who made them living by paying the price. Had Christ not been born, all the works of civilization, righteousness, and goodness that humanity would perform in the future would lack the melody of salvation. It is Christ born today who sanctified yesterday and redeemed tomorrow. I'm so sorry. This guy is like Christian ISIS. Okay? This guy is like Christian ISIS. That's how I describe him. Right? He's weaponizing Christianity for his own expansionist goal. Let's continue. We must reflect on the great lesson of Christ. He's now using it to justify expansionism. No matter how great a history, heritage, and value we had yesterday, it is worthless if our today is spoiled. Babylon and Persia, Athens and Rome, Sumer and Mesopotamia no longer exist in their ancient glory and greatness. They had a yesterday. What they lost was their today. Because they lost today, their yesterday has become a memory and their tomorrow a dream. They have reminiscence but no productivity. Ethiopia was a great country. It was a land of great civilizations, great governments, and great peoples. It was a land of great cultures and amazing heritage. The question is, what about today? If today we suffer from poverty, backwardness, and hunger, it means we have not redeemed our history. For it is today that redeems yesterday. Yesterday is tuned and interpreted by the spirit of today. Today's height raises yesterday up with it. Today's humiliation brings yesterday down with it. What is this guy saying? Yes, by the way, his name is Abiy Ahmed, but he actually is an evangelical. Look that up. He's not even an Orthodox Christian or like a Catholic. This guy is an evangelical. And that ties him to the American Evangelical Church, by the way. And his name is Abiy Ahmed. Anyways, a generation that realizes the greatness of our country has now been created. This generation has tasted the rod of poverty repeatedly. It has seen the ugly face of backwardness until it was enough. It has been forced to carry the misery caused by yesterday's mistakes until its shoulders bowed. It is a generation that has observed geographical imprisonment. That's us, by the way. That's Eritrea, the geographic imprisonment that he's talking about. Coming with eyes wide open and teeth bared. What the hell? He's literally saying Eritreans are coming with eyes wide open and teeth bared. Another level of demonization. On Christmas, that is what he learned from Jesus Christ's story. Okay? We learn from Jesus Christ's story that Eritreans are people who come with eyes wide open and teeth bared. It is a generation that not only knows how to measure and understand the extent of the problem, but also knows how to build the ship of transition. As the number of citizens who believe they can overcome yesterday's withered state through today's diligence increases, there is no doubt that our tomorrow's stature will improve. The righteousness and prophecy of the prophets continued because Christ, the God of the prophets, fulfilled their prophecy and was born. The books of prophecy found value because of the books of the gospel. The Old Testament found use because of the New Testament. Today has redeemed all of the yesterdays. If we want our yesterday to have value and honor, let us work diligently today. Instead of spending much of our time in the memories and reminiscence of today, let us spend it on the struggles and ups and downs of today. If our today is corrected and straightened, our yesterday will undoubtedly receive its proper honor. Had Christ not been born, the era of after the birth of Christ would not have been a new era. It is said, the best way to predict the next day is to create the day itself. Christ started humanity's tomorrow, and Christians walked in it. People who do better work today create a better tomorrow. People who live today in vanity, lethargy, and malice and conspiracy spoil tomorrow and making it worse. Ethiopia. Oh, I'm reading Abiy Ahmed's statement, by the way. That's if people are asking like what I'm reading, I'm reading Abiy Ahmed's statement that he released on Orthodox Christmas. Basically, being genocidal. Ethiopia's tomorrow will not come through today's wishes and desires alone, but through today's work and struggle. Some are immersed in acts of malice today to spoil Ethiopia's tomorrow. We, however, are busy with works that redeem tomorrow for the sake of straightening Ethiopia's tomorrow. Because we know that today is what redeems tomorrow, we do not sit and wait for tomorrow. We reach it by working from the manger of Bethlehem to the square of Calvary. As humanity's yesterday was sanctified and humanity's tomorrow was built, there were many different reactions. There were those who slept, there were those who despised, there were the killers, there were the persecutors, there were the conspirators. Are we the killers and conspirators, y'all? This is crazy, bro. Are we the killers and conspirators? Hold on. There were rumor mongers, there were obstructors, there were critics. On the other hand, there were those who understood and followed, those who cooperated to build tomorrow, those who dared to tell the truth, those who were determined to sacrifice for the truth. Though they were few, they were diligent in producing many. As Ethiopia's tomorrow is being built, the response is likewise varied, but those who win are those who work diligently. Victor Hugo once said, "There is no force on earth that can stop an idea whose time has come." Tell me this is not genocidal. The prosperity of Ethiopia is an idea whose time has come. No one can stop it. The greatness of Ethiopia is an idea whose time has come. There is no force that can hinder it. We stand today between yesterday and tomorrow. We make yesterday find its value through our work today, and we build tomorrow beautifully through our work today. We celebrate the birth of Christ while thinking of this historical responsibility of ours. Once again, happy Christmas. So this guy is like, genocidal. By the way, Merry Christmas. Right? May Ethiopia live forever, honored and respected through the efforts of her children. May the Creator bless Ethiopia and its people. Tell me this is not insane. This guy released this on Orthodox Christmas, sorry. This is another letter that was released by Prosperity Party, which is his party. It's very funny that it's called Prosperity Party, but literally this party is just genociding its own people, okay? It says here, right? Hold on. Ethiopia's maritime question, a just national cause gaining international legitimacy and momentum. This is what I mean. Okay? This is what I mean. This is literally what they're trying to do. They're trying to legitimize their cause. So it says here, Ethiopia's maritime question is a legitimate national concern of all Ethiopians and a matter of growing international relevance. It represents a core national interest and a historic cause rooted in centuries of statehood. As an ancient civilization, Ethiopia historically possessed maritime access and exercised sovereignty over both land and maritime territories. Through established governance, diplomacy, and commerce, the Ethiopian state maintained its territorial integrity and international standing, reflecting its dignity and civilizational depth. Ooh. Because this historical reality conflicted with the interests of hostile forces. Are we the hostile forces? Ooh, Ethiopia has long been subjected to external and internal attempts to weaken it. They don't even mention us by name. Crazy. Because who are they talking about? Are they talking about Eritreans? Are they talking about Somalia? We don't know. They don't mention us by name. It could just be anybody. It could be Eritreans or it could be Somalis, right? Crazy. Since the early 19th century, in particular, sustained pressure has been exerted to seize Ethiopia's maritime territories and deny it access to the sea. The logic was evident, and Ethiopia, with secure maritime access, would emerge as a strong, independent power beyond external domination. Despite repeated attempts, Ethiopia was never conquered, lol, its people never subjugated, and its independence never extinguished. Ethiopia was occupied by Italy, by the way, but anyways, I digress. Through collective resistance and sacrifice, Ethiopians preserved their sovereignty. However, through a prolonged conspiracy spanning more than a century, he calls Eritrea a conspiracy. How is this not dehumanization? How is this not dehumanization? This guy is literally calling Eritrean identity a conspiracy. Crazy. However, through a prolonged conspiracy spanning more than a century, employing mercenaries and internal collaborators, Ethiopia was rendered landlocked, albeit temporarily. For more than 3 decades, the country has been forced to depend on neighboring states of maritime access, while its natural, look at this, while its natural and historical right to a seaport has been repeatedly undermined. Why is it Ethiopia's natural and historic right to have access over Eritrean land? This is what I mean. Right? To a seaport has been repeatedly undermined. Today, it is widely acknowledged that maritime access lies at the center of Ethiopia's national transformation agenda, shaped by public demand and visionary leadership. Ethiopians have made it unequivocally clear that they will not accept the future defined by unjust landlockedness. From the outset, the national leadership has pursued a peaceful and principled solution through diplomacy, reciprocity, and mutual benefit. Under the leadership of His Excellency Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed. Oh, by the way, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia received a Nobel Peace Prize. Just want to say that. And this guy has like over 1 million deaths under his belt since 2018. And he received a Nobel Peace Prize. Crazy. Sustained efforts have been undertaken to resolve regional tensions and secure stable and sustainable maritime access. Nevertheless, zero-sum political actors opposed to the development of Ethiopia and its neighbors have persistently sought to obstruct these efforts. Ethiopia's demand for maritime access is legitimate, just, and irreversible. It is lawful because Ethiopia is a landlocked country of over 120 million people whose foreign trade depends overwhelmingly on external ports, imposing high costs and structural economic constraints. International practice and legal principles recognize the right of landlocked states to equitable access to the sea through peaceful and cooperative arrangements. Ethiopia is advancing this demand through diplomacy rather than coercion, fully aligned with global norms of fairness and mutual benefit. An increasing number of countries have expressed support for this rightful cause, recognizing the determination of the Ethiopian government and people. The national interest of Ethiopia has been denied due to the loss of maritime access. The national interest Ethiopia has been denied due to the loss of maritime access has instead generated revenue for others. That's Djibouti, by the way. I think he's talking about Djibouti there. Imposing unnecessary economic burdens while undermining Ethiopia's security and long-term development. Ethiopia's access to a seaport serves not only its own interests, but also those of neighboring countries, the region, and the international community. A secure maritime outlet will enable expanded trade, economic growth, and national development, contributing to regional stability, peace, and shared prosperity. Notice how he uses the word prosperity multiple times because his party is called Prosperity Party. This vision is consistent with contemporary global norms and the evolving international system. In an increasingly interconnected world, resources are shared in pursuit of equitable development by advancing its maritime interests through peaceful engagement and mutual benefit. Ethiopia aligns itself with these principles. Other landlocked countries are increasingly placing similar issues on their national agendas, further reinforcing the legitimacy and momentum of this cause. For these reasons, the maritime question has become a unifying national agenda and a just cause recognized internationally. It reflects Ethiopia's determination to safeguard its national interests while upholding fairness, equity, and mutual benefit, principles that have long defined. This is just ChatGPT, by the way. This is just ChatGPT. These people just wrote down, like, generate an eloquent statement. That's it. Therefore, every Ethiopian is called upon. This is interesting. It says here, therefore, every Ethiopian is called upon to contribute to this defining moment in national history. As we have affirmed, we do not inherit debts but rewards for the next generation. Let us fulfill our generational duty with unity and resolve and be remembered as a generation that restored Ethiopia's gateway to the sea. How is this statement not genocidal? Like, how is this statement not genocidal? He's, number one, calling on all Ethiopians who support him to join in on the cause. And he is saying that it is a generational duty to restore Ethiopia's gateway to the sea. How do you restore the gateway without occupying, invading, annexing, genociding people? Defending national interests, upholding a global justice, and acting with determination, patriotism, and humanity. Imagine. Crazy. And this was released when? January the 5th, 2026. Right? This is what I mean. These people, this government, is actively trying to manufacture consent to invade us, to, being genocidal. And then on the international community level, you got people justifying this by claiming how beneficial it could be if it was under Ethiopian control. So that's why it's very interesting that people are not paying attention to all of this when we're having, this being done. Crazy. Crazy. It's actually insane. So it's supposed to be a short live today, by the way. I've been live for an hour and a half. I did want to show you guys one more thing. A favor that I wanted to ask you guys of, which is, hold on. Which there are Eritreans who are literally starving currently in a refugee camp. hold on, where is it? Hey, where's the video? Sorry, I'm trying to look for the video. What the hell? Why am I not getting the video? Okay, well, the video I posted on my TikTok, by the way, and it's about Eritrean refugees who are literally starving currently. That's why I'm trying to highlight an initiative, which is in the link tree of my bio. It is an initiative that actively is helping Eritreans within these refugee camps. Yeah, so like that's one thing that I just I wanted to kind of highlight, by the way. So if you guys could, the link is in the link tree in my bio. If you guys could spread it around, even if you can't donate, just simply spreading it around would also be really good, because the starvation is like really bad in general. There's starvation in Tigray as well, because aid is being blocked by Abiy Ahmed. And then also the plight of Eritrean refugees is actively being ignored. So if you guys could spread that information. There's a video that I posted. I will repost it in my story, by the way, so you guys can see it. And you can see how bad the situation is. Literally, the video is of an Eritrean man who is literally picking up grain from the ground, like dirty grain. Right? So, yeah. You know if you can see likes on TikTok? So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I appreciate y'all so much. Please highlight the initiative within the link tree in my bio to help Eritrean refugees. I will repost the video on my story after I get off. Yeah. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for listening to my random rants sometimes. And hopefully you guys get educated a bit about the situation. And hopefully you educate yourself on Eritreans as well, because Eritreans are really suffering. Like, Eritreans are really suffering inside the country and outside the country as well. Like, Eritrean people, your average Eritrean people, there's a lot of suffering inside the country and outside the country as well. So one thing I would say is, oh my God, what the hell? What is up with Twitter? Sorry, I did not know what I was seeing. I was just paying attention to like telling you guys what to do, you know? But thank you for paying attention to my rant. And I'll probably go live tomorrow. Thank you, Sebastian. Literally, I'll go live tomorrow. And if you guys want me to talk more about Eritrea, I can do that too. With regards to situations about Eritrean civilians, how they're suffering and all that stuff, I can definitely kind of give you a rundown of it because the suffering is really bad. But yeah, anyways, I love y'all, appreciate y'all. Have a good evening and
predominantly black neighborhoods, and the fact that 84% of exonerations in our criminal justice system